Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 37 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by Jorah Mormont. Today we're discussing chapter 36 of A Game of Thrones, which is Daenerys 4.
As always, we'll chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, we'll provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what's happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out our show notes. They provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter.
That they do.
Hey, how are you?
I'm alright. How you doing over there?
Good, good.
Alright.
Surviving the isolation. Rocky weekend.
Yeah. Well, had some highs and some lows, I guess.
Milestone birthday.
Yeah.
And then had to put our 19-year-old cat to sleep. I lived with that cat longer than I lived with my parents.
Oh, man. I'm sorry to hear that, and so was Penny.
Yeah.
Although Carson pointed out to me today that it is actually Apollo that Penny was so infatuated with.
Yes. We've lost two cats in less than a year, so that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
They were litter mates, and they lived 37 years between them, so they did all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Good long lives.
And Stella's the one who died this weekend, and she has one of the great stories, of course, which I thought we might give them the front end of.
Yes.
In celebration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is one of I mentioned it to Carson just this morning.
You did. I saw that you mentioned it to her. So this is a few years ago now. Carson woke me up in the middle of the night and said, There's an animal, there's some kind of mouse or something. I was like, what do you want me to do? I can't catch a mouse. I mean, I'm not a cat. So I went straight back to sleep, and she sort of lay there sort of fuming about my patheticness. And then the next day, me and Lucas were laughing at her like she'd imagined it. She just dreamt this. But then sort of around like 11 a.m, she just shouts, "It's gone under the bed! I saw it again! It's under the bed!" So we all came traipsing into the bedroom, and we're sort of laughing at her still, that she's still imagining this thing. But what we do is we line up. I'm on one side of the bed, and Carson and Lucas on the other side of the bed. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift up the mattress and then lift up the box spring. And we lift up the mattress and stand that up on its end. And then we reach down to lift up the box spring. And just as I'm counting to 3 to sort of lift up the box spring, I say, 1, 2, and an animal chooses that instant to run across my stockinged foot. And you might be thinking, it's a mouse, yeah? You probably be like, oh, it's a mouse on my foot. This animal weighed 10 pounds. I thought like an otter was in the house or something.
I'm laughing so hard I can't breathe. I'm trying to do it silently so I don't mess up your story.
I screamed at the top of my lungs. I just was like, ah! But as I screamed, I looked down to see our beloved cat, Stella, who was under the bed, running across my foot. It was her. She was the 10-pound animal running across my foot, not this creature that we were seeking. Now, my scream alerted my family, who were 6 feet away, and they both leapt backwards like superheroes, like out of the way. But I obviously, recognizing that as the man of the house, screaming at this pitch and volume is not the best way to behave, I try to instantly reassure them. So mid-scream, having seen that it was the cat, I changed my scream into reassuring words, and so I ended up saying, it was only Stella!
Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing so hard.
Man, I do love that story. And the thing is, we don't have time for it, but that was the tip of the iceberg of that story. You remember the whole thing just went on and on. We had so many calamities that day involving what ultimately turned out to be a vole. Stella, or Apollo, had brought in a vole, and we had a vole in the house, which we ultimately captured and released back into the wild, so no animals were hurt in the apart from me.
You were hurt.
I mean, my life was shortened by this whole thing.
You were physically injured at least twice, right?
I was. I was physically injured twice, and Carson was physically injured once in that whole day. It just went from bad to worse. but Stella's moment was Stella's contribution to it.
Oh, man.
She made me scream. I still remember that instant of like, what in the hell just ran across my foot? I mean, I'm saying it now like I was thinking it through, but at the time I was just too busy screaming. We will miss Stella. She was a sweetie.
Yes.
All right, let's get down to business. Quick
do
recap
it.
of what Daenerys was up to last time we saw her. Last we saw her, Daeny, she was first laying eyes on the Dothraki Sea, if you remember, which is they were going to have to cross the huge ocean of grass to get to Vaes Dothrak. Previously to that, she was so miserable she'd contemplated suicide. However, after dreaming of a dragon, she began to just adjust to life in the khalasar. She shamed her brother by making him walk back with the khalasar after he attacked her in the grass, and later we found out that she was pregnant. Why don't we give them the summary? You first.
All right. Daeny and the Dothraki khalasar have finally traversed Essos and arrived at Vaes Dothrak. She had to employ every pillow trick that Dorea had taught her to get Khal Drogo to allow her brother Viserys to ride at the head of the khalasar once again. We've learned that Viserys hasn't learned any humility from being forced to walk, and it's quite clear that Ser Jorah Mormont has no respect left for the man.
As the trio rides under the giant bronze statues of stallions signifying they've entered Vaes Dothrak, Viserys is complaining that he's getting impatient waiting for the army that Khal Drogo promised him in the agreement for Daeny. When Viserys rides off, Jorah tells Daeny that if the Dothraki ever did make it to Westeros, their superior riding, archery and numbers would outmatch a Westerosi army. However, they would be near useless in a siege.
When Daeny is settled into her earthen hut she and Drogo will share, she prepares to offer Viserys gifts of traditional Dothraki clothing as both a peace offering and to help him improve his status in the eyes of the khalasar. She sends Dorea to ask him to dine with her and Eyrie to the bazaar to find food Viserys will enjoy.
Unfortunately, things don't go as Daeny planned. Viserys storms into her hut, shoving Dorea to the floor, furious that Daeny would dare command him to come to her. Daeny explains it was just a mistranslation by Dorea. To calm him, she shows him the gifts she's made for him. He calls them Dothraki rags and suggests she'll next want to braid his hair. She responds, slightly rashly, that he has no right to a braid. He has won no victories.
Whoops.
Not the right choice of words.
Yeah.
Viserys grabs her roughly by the arm as the dragon awakes, but Daenerys smashes him in the face with a heavy medallion. She tells him that if the Khal were to find this out, he'd gut Viserys. After he leaves, holding his face, a tired Daeny lays down, clutching a stone dragon egg to her stomach. She feels the baby move, responding to the nearness of the stone egg.
Yeah,
Viserys.
I tell ya, he's no fun, that's for sure.
No.
So Daeny, she gets her first look at the city that is Vaes Dothrak, which she refers to as 10 times larger as far as physical size of the city, 10 times larger than Pentos. So that's pretty big.
Yeah, but sometimes cities are big and sort of like not that. I remember reading that Jacksonville, Florida, is one of the biggest cities in the United States.
I've heard that as well.
By the area that it covers, but it's
right. And that
apologies to our listeners in Jacksonville, Florida, but it's not much of a city, really.
I've only driven through it on my way to Orlando.
When I was there 9/11. I was in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh wow.
I was due to fly out that day.
Wow.
Oh, I've got by the way, actually, on the subject of 9/11, I think I've discovered something. To those listening in the future, we're still in the midst of the coronavirus lockdown, quarantine. We're not going anywhere. I am in the process of applying for American citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
We probably mentioned that previously. When I was applying for the green card, my green card application was derailed by 9/11. Now my citizenship application has been derailed by coronavirus.
Would you just quit trying to become an American?
Things go terribly wrong when I engage with the immigration services. I should just not do it. This is clearly the lesson.
Your English accent's falling apart. I mean,
true. I think yesterday Trump tweeted that they was banning all immigration. So I don't know if that applies to me because obviously it was just a tweet, not like a thought through
Right.
document on what this means, but it might apply to me.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah. Hopefully a delay and no more. But I certainly haven't heard anything. The process is sort of stagnated. So.
Man. So, back on Essos.
We are really off topic here. Jacksonville, Florida, 9/11.
So, yeah, when they first arrive in Vaes Dothrak, they go underneath these gigantic stallion statues that are kind of rearing up and facing each other. I'm using hand motions, so clearly that's the way to do this on a podcast. I
did use a lot of hand motions during the Stella story.
You did, yes. I appreciated them. So, and they, like when she first goes through the statues, she doesn't even really see a city. They have to ride for quite a while before they actually get to the city. But when they do get there, all of the structures are kind of mismatched. There's some stone structures, some woven grass castles, some pyramids, and Jorah explains to her that the Dothraki don't build. It's the slaves that they have that do the building, and they build after the style that they're used to in their native lands. So that's why there's all these mismatched structures.
Yeah, which makes a certain amount of sense. Plus, I think the city is intended for all the Dothraki to come there, and they're used to sort of like camping. So most of the city is just open area for the armies to camp in.
Yeah.
Just with some palaces for the Khals.
Yeah, and they need a lot of space for horses.
That's true. You do. So Viserys at least is back on his horse. So he's although of course the only person who's unaware of the slight to Viserys is Viserys.
Right. Yes.
He's annoyed that he had to walk, but he has no idea how this has made everyone think of him.
Just shows how out of touch he is with the whole everything going on. But he's been being mocked since then. And they're referring to him as the Sorefoot King. And then the next day after Daeny makes him walk, Drogo offers him to ride in a cart. And he thinks that's Drogo offering kind of like an olive branch for the mistreatment that Daeny had given him. But it turns out that it's actually just more mocking, because only eunuchs and old men and pregnant women and people who are too sick to ride in carts. So then they start calling him the Cart King.
He can't catch a break by being undeserving of a break. He can't catch one.
It's amazing how that doesn't work out very well. You don't deserve one and you don't get one. Yeah, he's still refusing to embrace any of the Dothraki culture, and I don't know how he doesn't realize. I guess I do know how. It's so obvious he doesn't realize that he's not going to be able to lead these men when they have no respect for him. He has made no efforts to get to know them or know their culture or anything. He's just too much of a fool to realize. Yeah,
I wonder if maybe his thinking is that he doesn't actually have to lead them. He's going to be sort of carried by them to Westeros, ensconced as king, and then he will have the Westerosi underneath him, and he'll send the Dothraki home with his thanks,
Maybe. Yeah.
So he never actually has to try to lead them. They are just the means to the end for him.
I guess they'll need some sort of military leaders, I guess. The khalasar will need... The 10,000 men that he gets will need to be under the leadership of someone.
Assuming no Khal Drogo.
Right.
See, I was thinking Khal Drogo and his entire khalasar would be going, but that's right. That's 10,000, which is the promise, is not all of Khal Drogo's khalasar, right? It's just a portion of it. Yeah. So Viserys continues to disparage the Dothraki, commenting on their mismatched houses and the fact that their slaves do the building, that all these savages know how to do is to steal the things that better men have built.
Yeah. And he mentions that they lack the wit to understand the speech of civilized men. Of course, he's saying all this in the common tongue, knowing that they cannot understand what it is he's saying about them. In fact, at one point, while he's saying the mean things that he's saying about them, he turns back and gives them kind of a mocking smile to some of the other members of the khalasar.
But then Daenerys defends them. She says they're my people. You shouldn't call them savages. You know, so it's. We saw this in the last chapter, the last Daenerys chapter, that she's beginning to see, find common cause with the Dothraki, certainly over her brother.
Yes. Yes.
If not over all of the rest of Essos.
And I think the fact that she spoke up and said something to him shows that she's coming around to being able to stand up to him. As we see in a little bit, she really comes around to being able to stand up to him later in this chapter. But, she's feeling a connection with these people enough so that she's telling her brother, hey, knock it off. These are my people.
Yeah. So Viserys is clearly tired of waiting. Jorah tells him that he should have stayed back in Pentos, which has to seem like a good idea. Even to Viserys at this point, you would think. Because, as we said before, he's not speeding the day when he gets the 10,000 men.
Yeah.
He's just annoying everybody.
They still have to get to Vaes Dothrak, turn around, and come all the way back to the western shore of Essos before he can do anything with those 10,000 Dothraki screamers.
If I were Khal Drogo at this point, the 10,000 I give him would be the eunuchs, the old, the pregnant, the sick. Good luck with that.
All the people he doesn't like, just clear them out. So Daeny comes to Viserys' defense a little bit, and she says, my moon and stars should give him his army soon. He shouldn't keep him waiting. It's not fair. And Jorah explains that the Dothraki don't think about these things the way that these Westerosi people think about things. Viserys thinks he's sold Daeny to Drogo, and he expects payment for his sister, basically. And Jorah explains that the way that Drogo is thinking about it is that he has been given a gift of Daeny, and that someday, in his own time, he will return that gift. But you cannot demand the gift of a Khal. In fact, Jorah goes, you don't demand anything of a Khal. So there's a bit of a disconnect there.
Yeah. So, I really like this because I think this it would be easy to portray the Dothraki as just sort of simple savages, but George Martin has done a good job here because he's given them a completely different mindset, a mindset which justifies what I think, if you think of us as being sort of the equivalent of the Westerosi, sometimes it'd be hard for us to understand, sort of like Chinese or Japanese culture kind of thing.
Right.
And I think it's the same kind of thing. There's a different mindset here, the Dothraki. They're not expecting, you give me this, I will pay you. They're expecting, you've given me an honourable gift, I will repay you with a similarly honourable gift, but in my own time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
There's no timeline on that.
And I think if Viserys had spent any time trying to get to know the Dothraki culture, maybe he would have picked up on this on his own, but once again, no effort is being put into this. But Daeny says that Viserys tells her that he can sweep the Seven Kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki screamers. Jorah's response is, he couldn't sweep a stable with 10,000 brooms.
To be fair, it would be very difficult to handle 10,000
It would be. It would be. That's a good point.
He couldn't sweep a stable with a broom. Right. I'll give him that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Daenerys is kind of very interesting in this sort of chapter because she's becoming more and more Dothraki. She's liking their customs. She's falling in love with Khal Drogo.
Right.
She's embracing everything about it. But she can't shake being loyal to Viserys.
She really can't, even though he's such a jerk and he's done nothing but be mean and cruel to her. She's still loyal to him in some ways. She still hasn't been able to snap that loyalty.
But I guess, until just a few months ago, he was her only family,
right.
The only constant in her life.
Yeah,
it would be hard to cut ties with that.
And as I'm just thinking about it here, maybe Daeny is able to, well, one, she's a Khaleesi in a khalasar, so she's in a level of high regard, but also she's never really had anything of her own. She's always been in exile in a foreign land, and now she's finally got people that she can belong to, traditions that she can learn and customs and, a world that she can embrace for herself. Maybe that's why she's embracing it pretty well.
Yeah. That's perceptive of you.
So then, I found this next section pretty interesting.
My brother says that we use the word interesting too much.
Oh, yeah? All right. Yeah. Let me think here.
No. I'm with you. I mean, I find it interesting too. It's just he says, "Ugh, God, if you could just get away from always saying it's interesting."
It's interesting.
But
Okay. I find this next section intriguing. How about that?
Oh.
So Daeny and Jorah start talking about how these Dothraki screamers would fare in Westeros if they get over there and battle ensues. And first of all, I think that Jorah is uniquely qualified to make such a comparison, as he's one of the few people that have spent a lot of time around these Dothraki and have also spent a lot of time in battles in Westeros. So he goes back to when Daeny said he could sweep the 7 kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki screamers, and he says, Jorah says he couldn't sweep stable with 10,000 brooms, and then Daeny follows it up with, what if it wasn't Viserys? What if it was someone else who led them, someone stronger? I'm wondering if she's possibly thinking of maybe her child at this point.
Yeah. Or even Khal Drogo himself.
Sure, yeah.
Although that's an interesting outcome if you think about it, because if Khal Drogo were to, I'm just as guilty as you, my friend. Khal Drogo would not really be interested in the throne,
right? Yes,
they're just as powerful in Essos as they would be in Westeros.
Right.
They have no interest in taking over the whole place.
Yes.
They want to go from place to place, raping and pillaging. That's what's fun for them.
Right. Yeah, I like you were saying, I think it was the last maybe 2 Ned chapters ago, that really, unless the attempt to kill Daeny, or if they were successfully killed Daeny, enraged him so much that he thought, I'm taking the war to them, I really don't see that he would have any interest in crossing the narrow sea, which is something that will be very challenging for them in the first place, because they fear the sea, just to go over there and rape and pillage another continent.
But hypothetically, if they were to get rid of Viserys somehow, might not Daeny and Khal Drogo be a formidable duo?
Yes.
I'm just saying, you don't necessarily have to wait for this child to grow up.
Right.
The two of them could become a force and take the throne of Westeros together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can definitely see that. But, so Jorah, he gives a kind of his take on how this would go. And he says, when he was first in exile and he met these Dothraki, he thought that 1,000 good knights could defeat 100 times as many Dothraki. He's not so sure about that now, having spent more time around them. He says they're better riders than any knight. They're absolutely fearless. Their bows have better range. And he says, and don't overlook the numbers, how many of them there are. And he says, your Khal has 40,000 warriors in his khalasar alone. And he mentions that they're so good at firing their bows on horseback that they can be charging or retreating. They're equally as dangerous.
Yeah. Whereas in Westeros, they stop to fire, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, they're either back behind a shield wall, or they're somewhere stationary usually.
So Daeny asks if 40,000 is a lot. She's not, she's never seen a huge battle. She doesn't know if 40,000 constitutes a lot. Jorah tells her that her brother Rhaegar took 40,000 to the Trident, but only 4,000 of those were knights. The rest were free riders, foot soldiers, common people with spears, pikes, whatever. And as soon as Rhaegar died, most of them threw down their weapons and fled.
Right.
Can't imagine that lot being very brave in the face of a Dothraki scream.
Right.
The 4,000 knights, but
right.
But Jorah points to the single biggest flaw in the plan of invasion of Westeros with Dothraki, even with 10,000 Dothraki, is there is no incentive for the lords of Westeros to engage the Dothraki in the field.
Yep.
They would lose. They know it. but the Dothraki aren't the kind of people who can lay siege.
Right.
And Westeros is full of castles with high walls and big granaries.
Right.
Who can survive a siege, and the Dothraki are just going to get bored and give up.
Yeah.
Go home.
He mentions he doesn't even know if they can take the weakest castle in Westeros.
Yeah. And so that's the most significant flaw with the whole plan.
Right.
But then he throws up that there is one chink in the armor there, which is King Robert Baratheon.
King-size chink.
Yes, because King Robert Baratheon, as he says, should have been born a Dothraki.
Yep.
He would have no interest in being besieged, even by an army that wasn't very interested in besieging.
Right. Both sides are like, neither one of us want to do this.
Yeah. So, I mean, even like they pitch up, you're besieged for like a day and a half, and they wander off. He would not stand for it. He would want to get out in the field and fight them.
Could he resist? Like if his men, if his small council were saying, "Your Grace, if we just stay put behind our walls, we will wear them down. We can shoot stuff from our catapults at them, whatever. They're gonna get bored and go home." Could he do it?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it would be a very quick race against time between his patience and the Dothraki's patience. Right. Which one would crack first? I'd give it 72 hours max for both of them.
He'll be out charging after them as they're leaving.
It would be interesting though because of course interesting again. It would be curious to see because they would presumably head for King's Landing first. And then would he send ravens to have people come and attack? Because then that might be might be curious to see what would happen. Because then, if you're like, the Tyrells or something, do you come out of your castle to attack the Dothraki from behind?
Right.
Or do you say, you're fine.
Right.
It's the Dothraki. They don't have siege engines.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
Or patience.
Yeah. The way they describe Robert, about how he should have been born Dothraki and how he might just be brave enough and equally rash enough to meet them out on the battlefield, it kind of made me think back to him wanting to have the Daeny and the baby and Viserys killed, while Daeny's pregnant. It seems like he would be the kind of guy that would want to take this challenger on. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think he knows him a little bit, doesn't he? I mean, he's not a complete stranger to Robert, but so he has a fairly good insight into him. And I think it's clear that the only serious danger to Westeros would be King Robert. But then that also goes to what we were talking about with Viserys and Illyrio Mopatis. They were talking about they didn't want the turmoil in the realm.
Right. I was gonna just mention that this. I think we actually talked about this exact idea that maybe they want Robert to stay on the throne because they know that he's their best shot for an all-out war with the Dothraki. Because even right here is where Ser Jorah mentions that, yes, Robert might just be rash enough to rush out there and give these guys battle, but all his people around him are more strategic. And
your Stannises, your Tywins, your Ned Starks.
Yes, exactly.
And then he spits after saying that name because he has no fondness for Ned Stark.
Right. Yeah. Although he has he's been away a while, and he's also been traveling across Essos for a while, and he's got a little bit of outdated info. Ned is no longer Robert's hand, and the Lannisters may or may not be plotting Robert's death.
Yeah.
Stannis has gone
and of course,
missing.
Stannis, he's abandoned things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the answer to Daeny's question is, the Dothraki might be able to do this with the right leader in charge,
Right.
But the thing is, I think the one thing it would take, and I think this is where Jorah's sort of pointing a little bit, is it needs to be someone who can rouse some of the banners.
Yes, right. Yeah.
If it was just the Dothraki, no banners would go to them.
Right.
And so they would fail, because all you have to do is lock your door and wait for them to leave.
Right.
But if it was a Targaryen who, your Conningtons, your Darys, etc., would flock to, then you've got something going on. Because now you've got some bases that you can call your own.
Right.
Perhaps spread a little, it wouldn't be hard to paint Robert as a pretty terrible king.
Yeah, exactly.
Him being a pretty terrible king and all. So, where are we?
Well,
Vaes Dothrak?
So he does mention Ned real quick. He mentions Ned and he spits. And Daeny says, "You hate this Eddard Stark." And Jorah says that he took all I love for a few lice-ridden poachers and his precious honor, which is a little bit of a slanted view of the facts. But technically, he did sentence him to death for selling poachers to slavers. So,
yeah.
But, Jorah willingly disobeyed a long-standing rule of no slavery in Westeros and sold these guys as slavers. And you have to know, if your liege lord is Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell, that's going to come with some consequences if you get caught.
Ding, ding, ding. Yep.
I've always wondered why Jorah couldn't have just taken the black and gone and joined his father on the wall, I mean, I know why he sold the slavers. We don't know this yet, so we can't really talk about it. But there was a reason why, and I guess that's what would have prevented him from doing that. But rather than losing your head...
Well, I mean, the other thing is we kind of need him here.
Yes.
In Essos. So just for narrative purposes, he really needed to take management here.
It fits well in the story.
So Vaes Dothrak's mostly empty. The only people who live there full-time are the Dosh Khaleen and their servants and slaves. It is big enough to house all the khalasar, so Khal Drogo's is just one of many.
Yeah.
Drogo's palace is 40-foot high wooden feasting hall with horse yards, fire pits, earth mounds.
This is when she kind of chuckles to herself, because if you remember, it was way back in Daeny 1, she was getting ready for the party where she was going to meet Khal Drogo for the first time, and one of Illyrio Mopatis's slave girls, she's kind of a chatterbox, and she's going on, and she mentions that how rich Khal Drogo is, and that his palace has 200 rooms and doors of solid silver. And turns out that this palace actually is basically a rough wooden structure.
So we've mentioned before that in Vaes Dothrak, all the blades are collected. No one carries a blade, which is probably for the best, because the Dothraki can be a little rash.
A little touchy.
And so,
quick to anger.
Tough to kill Daenerys here, but also tough to protect her.
True. Yeah, but you could definitely see why Lord Viserys was not big on the plan to have Jorah kill Daeny while here in Vaes Dothrak. Doesn't seem like it would be very easy.
Ned might have liked that particular plan. So you're telling me to kill him horribly? Let him do it.
You know what? All of a sudden I'm in on this plan.
You think it's doomed to fail and they'll kill him? Yes.
Daeny thinks a little bit about Khal Drogo's blood riders. They're more than just guards. They're, as Drogo puts it, blood of my blood. And we've talked a bit about them in Daeny 2. We did a little bit of background information on them. And just so kind of a refresher, they don't outlive their cow. So if their cow dies, they either die with him, or if he was killed by an enemy, they live long enough to revenge him, and then they kill themselves or somehow die.
I've got to say, as a blood rider, if he goes down from sort of dysentery or something like that, I'll be like, I will find a cure. Spend the rest of my life working on a cure to dysentery. I will bring down your enemy and follow you into the halls of the dead.
I wondered if it was a job you could turn down. If you're honored with this, could you be like, well, you see, the thing is this.
I mean, I like you fine.
As much as I appreciate the offer, I think this guy's a better option.
You really like fighting with swords all the time. You're gonna get killed.
But there's some old khalasar traditions involving cows and their blood riders, involving sharing their cow's wine. Okay. Sharing their cow's tent. All right, sure.
Buddies.
Sharing their cow's wives. Daeny's not as big a fan of that one.
Yeah.
But never, ever sharing their cow's horse. Their mounts are their mounts, as they put it.
Yes, so. Understood. But Khal Drogo is not one of these traditionalists, thankfully, for
right.
Daeny.
Yes, she is quite thankful of that. She's not a big fan of the 3 Blood Riders. Do you want to tell us about the 3 Blood Riders?
So there's Kaholo, who's the oldest, but he is kindly towards her.
Yeah.
Hago is huge and silent and glowers and terrifies her. But Quotho is probably the scariest one. Yeah. He's got cruel eyes and quick hands, and he likes to hurt others. And even the horses are afraid of him. So, but, I mean, as someone who loves Khal Drogo, she should be fairly happy about this trio. They sound pretty badass.
Yes, they do. They actually sound so badass that she wishes her father had Blood Riders instead of Kingsguard.
Right.
She specifically mentions Jaime Lannister literally killing the man he was sworn to protect. And she also mentions Ser Barristan Selmy, who, as we just learned, I think, last Ned chapter or so, he was injured and he was brought back to health by Robert, and Robert pardoned him, and then he became Lord Commander of Robert's Kingsguard. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there I go again, because of course we see what Selmy did as pretty honourable.
Right?
He fought hard for his king. His king was killed. He continues to protect the realm and the current king.
Yeah.
But from Daeny's point of view, it seems like almost as big a treachery as Jaime's.
Right, yeah. If you think of it from her perspective, exactly. So she says, she's thinking about it, and she says when her son sits the Iron Throne, she's going to have Blood Riders. She's going to have him have Blood Riders to protect against his Kingsguard. And to me, that felt a little bit redundant. Maybe you just don't have the Kingsguard, and then your Blood Riders can protect you from everyone else. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking crazy.
There are 7 Kingsguard, though, so I mean there are more of them. So, like, if you had a big family, we talked about that before, that they have to presumably protect the royal family as well. So,
right,
3 Blood Riders might not be enough.
3 Blood Riders. The Blood Riders could just be his personal.
That's
protectors.
It. And then the Kingsguard can be the protectors / slayers of the rest of the family.
Depending on if Jaime's involved or not.
Yeah. So the first night in Vaes Dothrak, Khal Drogo wants to climb the Mother of Mountains to make a sacrifice for his safe return. This is a guys-only event.
Yeah, you notice I put sacrifice in quotation marks there. I'm picturing they're going to go up there, they're going to play a little poker, have some meat, eat some horse meat.
You gotta wonder, though. I mean, I can see this as a possible outcome, but that's how they behave in front of them.
That's true. Yeah.
What are they hiding? I mean, surely it must be something. That reminds me of. Do you remember when? What was he called? The actor who kind of went off the rails, son of another actor.
Oh, Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. When Charlie Sheen went off the rails, I always remember. I always remember. He says, not remembering. I always remember Ricky Gervais talking about sort of reading out Charlie Sheen's texts, and it was just this catalogue of like crime and sin and vice and all this stuff. And he said, this was a Tuesday. What does he do on the weekends?
So Daeny acts put out, as she's supposed to do. She says, "Tell him I will miss him, and I will wait for, his return." But secretly, she's thankful for the alone time, which again sounds a lot like poker night at the Ray house when I go to my friend's house to play poker, and Stacey's like, "Oh no, please." Don't go.
Yeah. Oh no, draw me a bath. Please don't go. But because she has a night to herself, she does have a first opportunity to sort of spend some time with Viserys and sort of heal the rift a little bit. So she gets these gifts together. They are authentic Dothraki clothing, which, in hindsight, probably not the one thing that he would have liked.
Who could possibly have seen anything going wrong here?
And she sends Dorea to go and get him, and she sends Irri to buy non-horse meat.
And her reasoning, her reasoning makes sense. Like for a rational person, it makes sense that he'll, as she puts it, hopefully he'll get more respect if he looks less like a beggar, and helping him try and fit in with the Dothraki khalasar. She wants him to look like a king here in Vaes Dothrak, and a little bit is kind of an olive branch for shaming him back in the Dothraki Sea.
Yeah,
that's not how things go exactly.
No, because Viserys storms in, dragging Dorea, shoves her to the ground. Daenerys says it's just a miscommunication. Dorea was asked to ask you, not to command you to come.
Yeah.
So then he tries to placate him. She's like, here, look at these gifts I got you. And Viserys dismisses them as Dothraki rags. Daenerys explains, you will be cooler because you've been wearing that wool and silk since you set off. And it's beginning to stink. And that's where the conversation, which is already pretty much a fight, takes one of those irrevocable turns that can sometimes happen in a fight.
Yeah.
Where someone says something that can never truly be unsaid.
And I think we're about to meet a dragon.
Yeah. I like to think of Daenerys saying this in a sort of snarky voice. Oh, I'd never do that, Viserys. You have no right to the braid. But I don't think that's how she said it.
Right.
I think she said it more lashing out, You have no right to the braid. You've won no victories. And that'll do it.
So Viserys wants to beat her. Like, he wants to just pummel her, but he can't because she's got all her handmaidens right here with her, and the Khas that's there to protect her is, just outside the door there. So a little bit tries to control his anger, and he responds with, I'm the Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, not some grass-stained savage. And then he loses it. He loses it, and he grabs her by the arm, and his fingers dig in, and he says, you forget yourself. And he says, you think your big belly protects you? I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, if that doesn't, then the medallion that I was going to give you as a gift whacked across the side of your head.
So that's what she does. She whacks him in the face with this heavy bronze medallion and says, did you learn nothing in the grass? Which clearly he hasn't.
Well, you see, again, not only did he learn nothing, he didn't even know there was something to learn.
Right.
He was just like, you've put me out. Yeah. This is annoying. I'm having to walk, He did not realize, and still doesn't realize, that he was demeaned by this. So she says if Khal Drogo finds out that you've attacked me again, he's going to feed you your own entrails. Let's just pause a moment to imagine this. So Viserys leaves, and Daenerys lays down with the green dragon egg against her stomach. When she puts it there, the baby moves, and she thinks of it as reaching out brother to brother. You are the dragon, the true dragon.
Which is exactly what King Robert fears.
Yeah. So, background, what do you got?
So, there's a term that they use in this chapter. We haven't talked about it to this point, but it's I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, so I'm going to just give it a go. Kalaka.
I like that. That's what I would say it.
The term Kalaka comes up involving Kaholo, which is Khal Drogo's oldest blood rider. And Kaholo saved a young Drogo from sellswords who planned to sell him to his father's enemies. And that's how he got his broken nose and broken teeth. At the time... Kaholo got his broken nose and broken teeth. Yes, thank you.
I was going to say, Drogo is still sort of perfect in the facial regions.
Yes, I believe so. At least Jason Momoa has a
exactly.
rather nice set of teeth.
Again, when we have him on the show, I want it to be noted that I said that first.
At the time, Drogo was a Kalaka, and that means heir to a khalasar. In the common tongue, the term means the prince is riding. However, unlike in Westeros, where the feudal system reigns, when a Khal dies, his heir does not automatically succeed him. He has to prove his strength to the khalasar in order to be accepted by them as their new leader.
So should Daeny have a son, he would be a Kalaka, presumably.
Correct, yes. Is As I understand it, anyway.
Yeah. But no guarantees.
Right, exactly. If Khal Drogo were to die, there's no guarantee that he would be the next Khal of the khalasar. He'd have to prove himself worthy.
Interesting. So the Shadowlands get a mention. They've had a couple of mentions before. Daeny and Jorah ride past statues so terrible that Daeny can scarcely look at them. Jorah says they likely come from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai. The Shadowlands, also called the Shadow, is a mountainous area in the far east of Essos. Ashai is located on the southwestern tip of the Shadowlands. So way east of Essos, but on the western end of the Shadowlands themselves. We've talked about Ashai before. It's where Bran saw the dragon stirring in his dream. To the north and northeast, the Shadowlands meet the Mountains of the Morn. The River Ash travels from the Mountains of the Morn to the Jade Sea, mostly through the Vale of Shadows, a valley so narrow with such high cliffs that it is said to be always in shadow except at noon. Along the Ash, the city of Stigai, often referred to as a ruined corpse city, lies at the heart of the Vale of Shadows. It is said that demons and dragons are among the creatures dwelling in cliff caves in the mountains. If you remember, Ser Jorah told Daeny that ghost grass grows throughout the Shadowlands, a grass that kills other grass as it continues to spread. Shadow men, the people of the Shadowlands, are known for covering their bodies in tattoos and wearing red lacquer wooden masks. Ancient tales from Ashai claim that dragons originated in the shadow and were first tamed by a people so ancient they had no name.
So, like I mentioned earlier, Jorah is uniquely qualified to compare the Dothraki Screamers and the Westerosi Knights in battle, and we've not really talked much about Ser Jorah's life over in Westeros, so I just want to talk a little bit about it. He was involved in the Battle of the Trident, fighting for Robert and the rebels, and he was also in King's Landing to see the aftermath of the sack of King's Landing. He apparently didn't impress the powers that be enough to earn knighthood during those events. It wasn't until the Greyjoy Rebellion that the then 35-year-old Lord of Bear Island earned his knighthood. Showing his courage, Mormont was one of the first men through the breach during the Siege of Pike. Thoros of Myr, who we mentioned, I think, in the last Sansa chapter, was first through the fallen wall of the main watchtower. Jorah was knighted by King Robert Baratheon himself for said bravery. Of course, he blew all that goodwill with the whole selling poachers into slavery thing. But he did kind of Forrest Gump his way into some important events throughout Westeros and Essos. So,
yep.
Oh, and quick side note about that battle, the Siege of Pike. Old Nan's grandson was killed in that battle.
Oh. So, comparison with the TV show, in principle, most of this is captured. Viserys' abuse of Doreah is somewhat compounded by an earlier scene in the show in which Doreah and Viserys are intimate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Shall we say. So, he'd already been intimate with her and then treated her terribly when...
He's a jerk.
He is. We don't see them talking to each other as they ride into Vaes Dothrak. The conversation between Daeny and Jorah about Viserys' unfitness and what are the chances of succeeding in the return of Westeros, they are postponed until after the fight between Daeny and Viserys. Okay. So the fight between Daeny and Viserys is very, very similar, down to the medallion across the face. Although she's dismissed the servants, so they actually do fight. He hits her.
Oh.
Because no one's around to witness it. He hits her and then she whacks him back with the medallion.
Alright.
And then she and Jorah talk in the aftermath of that. She's got like a black eye and she talks to Jorah about the things they talked about. Could Viserys do this? What if it was someone better than Viserys? You know, this kind of thing. All that.
Okay.
Pedantry. The more Jorah talks to Daenerys, the more I think if these guys really cared about Viserys, they would tell him the things that they know. Because, for instance, the understanding of the gift exchange, it's so fundamental to what Viserys, in his own mindset, he's got a perfect right to be bent out of shape that he isn't getting repayment. He thought, I give you this, you give me that. He's expecting payment.
Right.
Jorah's understanding of the Dothraki mindset is something that would really help Viserys come to terms with what he's struggling with.
I wonder if they've tried. I know Mopatis tried a little bit to explain some things to him about how all this is going to work and convince him to stay in Pentos and all that jazz. I don't know if even if they were telling him these things, if it would register. He's so...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're not seeing that. And certainly they don't... It doesn't feel like they're plotting against him. It just feels like they've given up trying to help him.
I think Jorah's completely done with him. I think he has realized that he's...
This guy is not my meal ticket back to Westeros.
Yes, exactly. I think maybe he's thinking the sister might be more of the meal ticket.
Yeah. Of course, his primary meal ticket is stabbing these two in the back. Still, that's his best bet.
Right.
So let's conclude.
Yeah.
Viserys is pretty much the fool we know him to be.
Yep.
He's really. I think he's really topped out now. I mean, there was Joffrey for a while, but now Lady's death is fading into the distance.
Yes, I think he's definitely pulled ahead, probably by a whole body length here.
Yeah.
Give Joffrey time. He might be about to say, "Hey, hold my beer,"
Yeah.
But this khalasar is never going to respect him, and he's just not the kind of guy that people are going to follow. He's the kind of guy that thinks leadership is a birthright, not something that you have to earn.
Yeah.
And, he's also a bit of a coward, so that's certainly not going to earn him any more respect in a khalasar.
Yeah. We said this the very first time he mentioned waking the dragon, that it just sounded like exactly what a cowardly bull would say,
Naming his temper.
Yeah. So will Drogo find out about the incident? So the interesting difference there between the book and the TV show was in the book he keeps his hands to himself apart from squeezing her arm. In the TV show he whacks her across the face and leaves her with a bruise. But at no point did she say, if Khal Drogo finds out about this, he'll feed you your own entrails.
Right.
So the threat wasn't there either in the show. But yeah, if he does find out, he's not going to be too pleased.
Yeah, that could go really bad for Viserys because he doesn't need Viserys at all. I really think he's keeping Viserys around because out of respect for Daeny.
Yeah. I think that's one aspect that we're not seeing much of. I mean, we know that Daeny is falling for Khal Drogo, but I think it's very much a two-way street. I think he is realizing he's got somebody kind of special in Daeny as well.
Yeah.
And so if his marriage had turned into something, just like a duty, sort of like it was someone he wasn't that interested in, he would have killed Viserys.
Totally, yes. I think you're right about that. And Jorah paints a colorful picture of a war between Westeros and Dothraki. Did you like that, Rob? Colorful? Was that better? Yeah. So the Dothraki are obviously, at least in Jorah's opinion, are superior in the field. And the Westeros and their lords have their castles.
Yeah. But there is the dual hope. One is that Robert is rash enough to engage them, and the other one is that sufficient banners are roused to usurp the usurper,
right? Because
he's not proven to be a great king, and there were some good Targaryen kings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. Varys and Mopatis, is part of their plot to keep Robert on the throne? Is this why they're keeping Robert on the throne? Or have we not gotten to whatever their plot is about yet?
Yeah. But the flip side of that is, I mean, I think obviously Varys and Mopatis are trying to be sort of like nimble with the plan because the situation's in flux. But if something were to befall Robert, then Kingdom would be in a little bit of turmoil, just a little bit. I mean, there's obviously a natural progression. But although Robert is pretty hopeless, he is sort of the glue between two broad factions in Westeros. Right. Specifically, the wolf and the lion.
Yes. The
Starks and the Lannisters both have one thing in common and one thing only, and that is Robert.
Yes,
Baratheon.
Exactly.
Outside of him,
could be a problem.
Yeah, if King Joffrey were to ascend the throne, then it would be very interesting to see what would happen if that king called the Starks to come and defend him.
Right.
his own father doesn't like. His own father would not bestir himself to defend that.
That's right. All right. Anything else?
No, that's good.
All right.
As always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhall@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at ghostharrenhall, Facebook, Instagram, and now on YouTube. And just a thank you for the birthday wishes we got on both Facebook and Twitter. That was very nice. I am not much of the social media. McKelly is our empire, basically. And,
you got some on Instagram too, by the way.
I got some on Instagram? I don't even know how to get to that. But it was very nice, and of course, I mean, it was a milestone birthday, and to do it like with nobody around.
25.
I told you my brother, yeah, something like that. I told you my brother's joke. He said, well, I mean, you're lucky, Simon, in that the coronavirus, you were still surrounded by all of your friends and admirers.
Rob, he's a clever one, that Rob.
Yeah.
So.
Don't laugh. I want you to edit out your laughing. I don't want him to hear that.
Crickets. I'll put in a cricket sound.
That would be ideal.
Well, if you guys wouldn't mind helping us out by leaving a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or podchaser.com, that would really go a long way in helping us get the word out. We'd much appreciate that.
Yep, that'd be great. All right, thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.